Marie was only 10 years old when her life changed forever. She had been on a family trip with her mother and 2 younger brothers. But they never returned home. A car accident took their lives, leaving Marie and her father John to pick up the pieces. Marie's father struggled to cope with the loss of his wife and children. He worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, leaving little time to spend with his daughter. Marie felt alone and lost without her mother, who had been a rocking source of comfort. She missed her brothers too, and the house felt empty without their laughter and energy. As the weeks turned into months, Marie's grief didn't lessen. She missed her family terribly and couldn't understand why they were taken away from her. Her father John tried his best to be there for her, but he was often too tired and stressed to offer much comfort. Marie found herself turning to her school as a refuge, where she felt a sense of normalcy and routine in her life. Despite the challenges she faced, Marie was determined to be strong for her father. She knew he was struggling too, and didn't want to burden him with her own pain. She tried her best to be cheerful and helpful around the house, taking on more responsibilities to ease her father's workload. But the weight of her grief was too heavy to bear alone. Marie's heartache for her mother and brothers, and she felt lost without them. She found herself daydreaming about them often, wondering what they would be doing if they were still alive. Her father tried his best to console her, but he too was still grieving and didn't have all the answers. Marie's time at school was the only time when she truly felt happy. She enjoyed learning new things and being around her friends. At school, she could forget about her troubles at home and the pain of losing her mother and brothers. Marie had a special bond with her teacher, Camilla. They would talk about everything, from schoolwork to personal issues. One day during recess, Marie was sitting alone on a bench lost in thought. Camilla noticed her and approached her. "Marie, are you okay?" she asked with a concerned look on her face. Marie looked up and smiled weakly. "I'm fine, Miss Camilla, just thinking." Camilla sat down next to her and put a hand on her shoulder. "You know, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here for you." Marie felt a warm feeling in her heart, knowing that she had someone to confide in. As time passed, Marie and Camilla's relationship grew stronger. Camilla noticed how Marie struggled with the absence of her mother and tried to help her as much as she could. She would offer her a listening ear whenever Marie needed to talk about her feelings. Marie's heart ached for her father as she saw him struggle with his grief every day. She tried to do everything in her power to help him, including cooking his favorite meals, cleaning the house, and even doing the laundry. But no matter what she did, her efforts were in vain. Her father remained despondent and distant. One evening, while John was sitting alone in the living room staring at the family pictures on the wall, Marie approached him and said, "Daddy, I know you're still sad about Mommy and the boys. But I'm here for you and I want to make things better. Can you talk to me about how you're feeling?" John didn't say anything for a moment. Then he turned to Marie and hugged her tightly. "I miss them so much, Marie," he said. His voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to go on without them." Marie hugged her father back, tears streaming down her face. "I miss them too, Daddy," she said. "But we have to keep going. We have to be strong for each other." Despite Marie's best efforts, John's sadness continued to weigh heavily on him. He would often come home late from work, exhausted and irritable. Marie tried to be patient and understanding, but sometimes it was hard for her to keep her own feelings in check. She missed her mother and brothers terribly, and she wished that her father would find a way to move on from his grief. But no matter how much she tried to help him, John seemed to be stuck in his despair. Marie didn't know what to do. And she often felt helpless and alone. She wished there was someone who could help her father. Someone who could show him that life was still worth living. Marie had been feeling an unbearable pain in her private parts for days. But she refused to tell her father. She didn't want to burden him with any more problems. Especially since he was already struggling to keep their household afloat. The pain continued to grow more intense, and Marie found it difficult to concentrate on anything else. She couldn't sleep properly, and had trouble focusing on her schoolwork. One day during class, Marie felt an intense pain in her lower abdomen. She tried to ignore it, but the pain was too much to handle. She couldn't even focus on her studies. Camilla noticed Marie's discomfort and pulled her aside after class. "Marie, what's wrong?" she asked. Marie hesitated for a moment before finally telling Camilla about her pain. Camilla examined her and realized that Marie had started menstruating. She explained it to Marie, but the little girl was too embarrassed to talk about it. "Don't worry, Marie. It's completely normal. I'll help you through this," Camilla reassured her. She went to the school nurse and got some supplies for Marie. She explained to Marie how to use them and promised to keep it a secret. Miss Camilla knew that she had to do something to help Marie. So she called 911 and explained the situation to the operator. She also made sure that Marie was comfortable and felt safe until the ambulance arrived. When the paramedics arrived, they took Marie to the hospital for further evaluation and treatment. Miss Camilla couldn't help but feel angry at Marie's father for not noticing that his daughter was in pain. She wondered how he could be so oblivious to his own daughter's suffering. She decided that she would do everything in her power to make sure that Marie was safe and well cared for. The next day, Miss Camilla visited Marie at the hospital. She brought her flowers, and they talked for a while. Marie was still in pain, but she was relieved that someone cared about her. Miss Camilla knew that she couldn't leave Marie alone with her father, who seemed to be neglectful of her needs. She decided to take matters into her own hands and report the situation to the authorities. When the police arrived at the hospital, Miss Camilla explained the situation to them. She told them about Marie's pain and how her father seemed to be too busy with work to notice. The police took down her statement and promised to investigate the situation. Miss Camilla also reached out to Marie's father and tried to talk to him about the situation. She explained that Marie needed him and that he couldn't just ignore her needs. She also offered to help him find resources to better care for Marie. John was devastated when he heard the news about his daughter's pain. He felt guilty that he had neglected Marie's needs while trying to provide for the family. After the accidents that took his wife and younger sons, he realized that he'd been so consumed with his work that he hadn't been there for his only daughter when she needed him the most. John knew he had to make it up to Marie, but he didn't know how. He was lost and desperate. He didn't want to lose his daughter too. He remembered that Marie had a good relationship with Miss Camilla, her teacher, and decided to ask her for advice. When John met Miss Camilla, he poured his heart out to her, telling her everything that had happened to his family and how he had been struggling to keep the household running. Miss Camilla listened patiently and understood his pain. She knew that John was a good man and caring father, but he had just lost his way. Miss Camilla advised John to spend more time with Marie and to be there for her whenever she needed him. She also told him to try and talk to Marie more and ask her about her feelings and concerns. John took her advice to heart and promised to do everything he could to make it up to his daughter. John went home that day determined to make things right. He started by cooking dinner for Marie. And they sat down together to eat. He asked her about her day and how she was feeling. Marie was surprised but happy to see her dad making an effort. She felt loved and cared for. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had her dad back. Over the next few weeks, John spent more time with Marie. He helped her with her homework. And they watched movies together. He even took her out for ice cream. Just like they used to before the accident. Marie felt happy and loved, and her pain began to fade away. John and Miss Camilla spent more time together. After she helped him with his daughter's situation, they found that they had a lot in common. And enjoyed each other's company. They shared meals and talked for hours. About their interests and dreams. As they grew closer, John began to see Camilla in a new light. He had never felt this way before, since his wife had passed away. But now he felt something stirring inside him. Something he couldn't ignore. He found himself wanting to be near her all the time. To hear her voice and feel her touch. One day, while they were out on a picnic, John found the courage to express his feelings to Camilla. He said, "I know we've only known each other for a short time. But I feel like I've known you forever. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Camilla was taken aback by John's sudden confession of love. She had grown fond of him too. But she was hesitant to jump into a relationship so soon after they had met. "John, I don't know what to say," she stammered. "I think we need to take things slow. And make sure this is what we both want." John was disappointed but understood Camilla's reservations. He agreed to take things slow. And let the relationship develop naturally. Over the next few weeks, John and Camilla continued to spend time together. Getting to know each other even better. They went on dates, watched movies, and talked about their past and hopes for the future. As they grew closer, John found himself falling more in love with her every day. Finally, one evening while they were having dinner at Camilla's house, John knew it was the right time to propose again. He got down on one knee and held out a small box. "Camilla, I know we've only known each other for a short time. But I can't imagine spending another day without you by my side. Will you marry me this time?" Camilla didn't hesitate. She smiled through her tears and said yes. John slipped the ring on her finger. And they embraced in a loving hug. Marie was overjoyed when she heard the news. She had never seen her father so happy. And she loved Miss Camilla like a second mother. She couldn't wait for them to get married and become a family. John and Camilla's wedding day finally arrived. And it was a beautiful one. Marie was the happiest girl in the world. To see her father and beloved teacher getting married. Everything was perfect, the decorations, food, music, and most importantly, the love between John and Camilla. Marie couldn't believe how much her life had changed. From being a lonely and sad girl who lost her mother and brothers in a tragic accident to having a loving family again. She looked around and saw her father and Camilla dancing. And she couldn't help but feel grateful for everything that had happened. As the night went on, Marie couldn't resist expressing her gratitude to her father and Camilla for everything they'd done for her. She approached them with tears in her eyes and said, "Thank you for making me feel loved again. I never thought I could be this happy again. But you both made it possible." John hugged his daughter tightly and said, "We love you, Marie, and will always be here for you." Camilla added, "You're our little angel. And we'll never let anything bad happen to you again." From that day on, Marie's life was full of joy and love. She went to school every day with a smile on her face. knowing that she had a family who loved her unconditionally. She continued to excel in her studies. And with the help of her father and Camilla, she pursued her dream of becoming a doctor. Marie never forgot about her mother and the role she played in her life. She knew that her mother was watching over her from heaven and was proud of her for overcoming all the difficulties she faced. She believed that her mother's love was irreplaceable, and she was grateful for all the memories she had with her. In the end, Marie learned that life can be tough, but with love and support, anything is possible. She learned that family doesn't always mean blood relatives, but it's the people who love and care for you. And most importantly, she learned that a mother's love is eternal. Even though her mother was no longer with her physically, she would always hold a special place in her heart. As the years went by, John and Camilla lived a long and happy life together. With Marie by their side, they watched her grow into a successful doctor, get married, and have children of her own. And every time they looked at her, they couldn't help but feel grateful for the day they met and the love they shared. Chris and Whitney Matney love their daughter very much, and making sure she is happy is always their top concern. When their daughter's behavior changed quickly and became less happy and sweet, they became worried. Whitney put in a secret camera in their home because she was determined to find out what was going on. When the parents watched the video, they were shocked by what they saw when Chris and Whitney Matney's daughter Rayleigh was born in Springdale, Arkansas, in 2011. They were filled with absolute joy. The first time they brought Rayleigh home, they were so happy. That was the start of their new life as parents. Whitney, a working mom, chose to go back to law school once Rayleigh was no longer a baby. Whitney looked for the best caretaker for Rayleigh. Even though it was hard to be away from her child, what should have been a normal change turned into a nightmare. Whitney was so picky about finding the right nanny that she put an ad on Facebook. Melissa Medema, who used to be in high school with you, showed interest. Even though they knew each other, Whitney knew how hard it could be to hire the right nanny. Whitney knew she needed to do a full background check and digital investigation. Even though she had great suggestions, the scary stories of nightmare nannies who sex, stole, abused their employers showed how important it is to do your research. Susan Tokir, an expert on in-home child care, stressed how important it is to do thorough screening because even the best first views can be wrong. Even though it seemed impossible that such horrible things could happen to her own family, Whitney had doubts about whether she had chosen the right person. Whitney carefully looked over Melissa's Facebook page to make sure her daughter was safe and didn't find anything fishy. Additionally, Melissa had a reference give her a glowing suggestion. The last step was a face-to-face meeting. Whitney was glad to see that Melissa and little Rayleigh got along right away. Whitney hired Melissa right away because she was sure she had found the right person. Whitney was excited to go back to school and follow her dream after taking care of her baby at home for a few months. Even though she was excited to get back into the world, she was nervous about leaving her daughter alone for the first time. She felt better, though, because she knew she had hired a good nanny when Melissa got to the Matney's house for the first day of work. Both parents went their different ways, trusting that Melissa would take good care of their daughter. Everything seemed to be in order when I got home after a long day. Melanie looked after Rayleigh, who seemed happy and healthy at first. But later that night, the parents saw that their daughter was acting oddly. Whitney went into Rayleigh's room and saw the little girl crying and yelling, as if she was scared. Whitney first thought it was because she was sick or tired because she couldn't figure out what was wrong. Even though she was worried, she thought the behavior would go away on its own and didn't think anything bad about the new nanny. As time went on, Melissa told Whitney that Rayleigh was sleeping for 4 hours at a time, which was longer than normal. Whitney and Chris were worried because Rayleigh wasn't taking her usual short naps. This led them to get help from a professional. Whitney took Rayleigh to the doctor to make sure that her behavior wasn't caused by something else. The doctor checked Rayleigh carefully and didn't find any signs of illness or pain. The doctor thought Rayleigh might be having separation anxiety after hearing about the recent changes at home. This is a common phase for babies and toddlers where they feel very anxious when they are not with their parents. A baby's separation anxiety usually starts around 6 months and is worst between 10 and 18 months. A kid may cling to their parents, scream, and panic when a parent leaves the room. They may also have trouble sleeping. Whitney thought that Riley's behavior might be caused by separation anxiety. But she saw that the behavior problems began when they hired Melissa. Whitney had to pay attention to the signs because she was suspicious of the nanny's role. Rayleigh hid behind her parents every time Melissa came over. This could have been out of fear or the knowledge that Melissa's appearance meant her parents would leave. Whitney thought it was time to do something about the strange behavior that had been going on for a month. She bought a nanny cam that looked like a camera and was shaped like a clock radio. She placed it in a way that would record any possible wrongdoing. Behavior that was upsetting was caught on the nanny cam. Whitney noticed something strange when she got home. The secret camera was facing the wall. Even though it was set up to record the living room. Whitney hurried to her computer to watch the video because she was afraid the worst would happen. The things she found shocked her to her core. Whitney thought Melissa could be trusted because they had worked together before and had good references. But Melissa was beating her daughter on a regular basis. On the video, Melissa was seen leaving Rayleigh in a baby jumper on the porch for 2 hours. Whitney was terrified to see her daughter being abused over and over again while she was stuck in one position and getting hungry and thirsty while Melissa went about her business without caring about the child's pain. The recording showed Melissa doing even more troubling things. It was caught on camera that she hit Rayleigh to try to stop her from crying and screaming while carrying her. Rayleigh was in a lot of pain and fear. But she couldn't help but cry. Melissa then grabbed Rayleigh by the waist and shook her very hard, moving her back and forth and around in circles until the baby stopped crying because she was dizzy. This rough shaking can cause a condition called shaken baby syndrome, which is very dangerous for babies. It might not show any symptoms right away, but it can hurt the brain, tear nerves and blood vessels in the brain, and cause the brain to hit the head and swell or bleed. The effects include trouble breathing, feeling tired, and in the worst cases, seizures. Whitney was scared when she heard the abuse on the tape. Rayleigh was rushed to the emergency room, where she was checked out carefully and found to have no physical injuries. Even though this was good news, Whitney couldn't get rid of her worries about the possible psychic harm and long-lasting trauma. Whitney called the cops because Rayleigh was no longer in danger with the scary nanny. She made plans with a police officer to arrest Melissa when she got to work the next day. Melissa seemed to know she was being recorded because she looked right into the nanny cam and turned the radio around to face the wall. She probably knew that what she was doing was being recorded. It was strange that Melissa went to work the next day as if nothing had happened. But today was the day she would be told what she had done wrong. As soon as she got out of her car, she was taken. Film was made of the arrest before Melissa was taken to the police station. After being abused for a month, Melissa would finally get what she earned. One of the cops told Whitney that she was lucky to have found out about the abuse so soon because things could have turned out very badly if she had waited a few more days. Despite this, Whitney also got some upsetting news. Even though Melissa was caught on tape abusing her child, she would only be charged with a Class D crime. Melissa had never been convicted of a crime before, so she could only be charged with the most serious felony. The charge would be putting a child's safety at risk. On the other hand, Whitney thought Melissa should get harsher punishments for her crime. Melissa would only spend 3 months in jail if the jurors found her guilty. After that, she would be on probation for up to 3 years. The thing that worried Whitney the most was that Melissa would not be charged with this crime after her probation was over. Whitney was upset that Melissa might only get a short jail sentence and a short probation time. It would be even worse if Melissa didn't commit any more crimes during that time. It would be like she was never guilty at all. This meant that another family might hire her as a babysitter without knowing it. Whitney was worried about this chance and felt she had to stop it from happening again. She looked into it and found that there was no national register for people who abuse children. Because there wasn't a registry, families couldn't be warned not to hire them after their probation time was over. Because she felt like it was her job. Whitney told everyone that Melissa had abused little Rayleigh and could be a danger to other kids. Whitney thought that telling people her story and speaking out against Melissa in public was the best way to wake them up. In her work, she tried to get the news out by working with the media. Whitney tried her hardest to tell everyone about her story. But she knew it wasn't enough. She started to think about how many nannies like Melissa hurt kids without getting caught on camera when she realized what the bigger problem was. A lot of them did horrible things that put the kids in their care in great danger. Whitney chose to find a solution after getting her law degree. She wanted to deal with the bigger problem. In Arkansas, she started to run for office and get support. Her plan was to start with her own state and then spread it to the whole country. Whitney agreed that this would take a lot of thought and time. The woman told ABC News, "We're going to send out a bill. Arkansas will be the first state to have a registry if it passes, listing everyone who's been criminally convicted for everyone to see. This bill would make things a lot easier for parents everywhere if it passes. Not only would Melissa never be able to work as a nanny again, but anyone found guilty of child abuse would have the same limits. Rayleigh Matney is unfortunately not the only child who has been abused. You should be proud that the Matney family got justice and everything worked out. But this doesn't always happen." Whitney was able to save her daughter's life because she thought quickly and had good instincts. Melissa never told her side of the story. And when the media tried to talk to her about what happened, she flatly refused. The reasons Melissa did what she did will stay a mystery. Rayleigh had a good childhood. And it looks like she has forgotten about the abuse she went through as a child. When an ABC News reporter asked Whitney how Rayleigh was doing, her face lit up right away. Whitney said, "Rayleigh is doing great. She's energetic, sassy, always smiling. Even though there's a possibility that some psychological issues might manifest in the future, everything seems to be just fine." That's all about the first story, and now let's watch another one. After finding a secret passage in her husband's house and learning the secrets that were kept behind it, her life turned into a nightmare. Laura was sad about the problems in her life one night as she sat in a bar. She wasn't done with her teaching course when she was 35. But a friend recommended her. And she got a job as a kindergarten teacher for 5 years. Unfortunately, the job was recently filled by a 29-year-old postgraduate in early childhood education, leaving Laura out of work and down in the dumps. In addition, she had never been in a serious relationship, and her dream of getting married and having kids had never come true. Laura was shy, which made it hard for her to start new relationships. Even though her dark blonde hair made her look beautiful. A middle-aged guy with brown hair and a clean-shaven beard looked at Laura while she was sitting in the bar. They smiled and looked at each other. When Laura's drink was empty, she left. But she couldn't forget the strange man. The next day, she tried to get a job as a teacher but was unsuccessful. She was desperate for any kind of work and went to cosmetics, clothing, and shoe shops, where she ran into the mystery man again. Even though they smiled at each other, he left. And Laura spent the whole day looking for work. She was tired when she went back to the same bar to see him again. But she was let down when he didn't show up. A few days later, Laura ran into the mystery guy again while she was shopping at the market. She was tempted to talk to him. But she didn't. He left before she could get the nerve to do so. This was the third chance I had missed to talk to him. In the late evening, Laura went back to the bar. Still hoping to see the mystery man this time. The handsome and mysterious man was there again. And Laura was determined to start a talk even though she felt awkward. After getting the confidence to speak up, a waiter gave her a folded napkin and said it was from the mysterious man. This took her attention away for a moment. "Can I buy you a drink?" was written on the paper. Laura smiled and nodded her head yes. The man came up to her and said his name was Martin. He was a real estate salesman and 41 years old. He had moved to town for work 2 years ago. He was very busy. So he didn't have any friends in the area. They talked the whole night. And at the end of the night, Martin and Laura swapped business cards because Laura was so moved by his words and smile. After that, they started meeting every day at the same bar. And Laura became more and more attracted to Martin's charm. So she didn't notice some strange things about the way he was acting. Martin, who is quiet and old-fashioned, said he wasn't on any social media sites. Due to their age gap, Laura thought some of their actions were a little strange. But she didn't pay much attention to them. As the days went by, their relationship grew stronger. And Laura got a job as a salesperson at a cosmetics shop to pay her bills. After 3 months with her boyfriend, Laura was happy with her new job and asked Martin about his family. His reason was vague. Though, he said he didn't have any family in the city and wasn't close to them. Laura decided to trust Martin even though she had doubts. Martin had also never asked her to his house because he was remodeling the kitchen and didn't want to make a mess. Martin made her friends dislike him after she introduced him to them. They thought he was strange, empty, and shallow. And they could tell that not everything he said was true. As Laura's friends saw Martin's strange behavior while they were out, their worries grew. A lot of Laura's friends were worried about Martin. They thought something wasn't quite right with him. Laura stood up for her older, more shy boyfriend by staying in love with him even though they told her not to. After meeting for 6 months, Laura brought up marriage and said she wanted to start a family, even though she was in her mid-30s. But whenever the subject of marriage came up, Martin would act coldly and say that he never thought it was necessary for pleasure. He said that love was the most important thing, which made Laura a little sad but hoping that he would change his mind over time. On a Saturday, Martin sent Laura a message asking her to lunch at his house and telling her that the kitchen renovations were done. She got dressed up, took an Uber, and arrived at Martin's beautiful 2-story home, which had a large living room and a lovely kitchen. Martin seemed to be doing well for himself. But Laura couldn't help but notice how the house was set up and decorated in a very girly way, with plants in pots, flowered pillow covers, and other small details. The house didn't look like the home of a single man. Martin casually told Laura that his mother had helped decorate when she told him about her observation. Even though Laura thought his answer was strange, she didn't think about it too much and went on with lunch. Laura began to visit Martin's house more often over time, and he finally asked her to move in with him. He said that living together would be the same as getting married, so she wouldn't have to pay rent and would own everything. Although Laura was interested in the idea, she was wary of it at first. Laura's friends told her not to move in with Martin and believe him, saying they weren't sure if he would be reliable, even though they told her not to. Laura, who was deeply in love with him, chose to take a chance and move in with him. But Martin had one condition: she could never come into his office. He told her that there were important real estate papers there that he didn't want to be moved or lost. Laura agreed because she knew how important his job was. But she couldn't clean or organize the room. It looked like living together would be fine. And Martin was caring and met her needs. He told her she didn't have to worry about bills anymore because she was his wife after a week and asked her to quit her job. He suggested that she finish her work online so that she wouldn't have to go to college every day. Laura thought about it for a while and then agreed to quit her job and start taking online classes. Laura couldn't get rid of the thought that something wasn't right with her new life. Even though there were good things about it, the world changed slowly over time. Laura noticed that Martin would get up and leave the bed for a long time almost every night. When asked about it, Martin said he slept well. Strange sounds that sounded like kicks in the walls were also heard, especially at dawn and when Martin wasn't at home. When Laura told Martin about her worries, he told her that the noises were just in her head. Months went by while Martin worked away from home and Laura took care of the house and her schoolwork. Even though her life seemed solid, it wasn't what she wanted. Laura also saw things going missing from the kitchen, like bread, fruits, and even meals she had planned to make the next day. When she asked Martin about it and tried to get an answer, the story became more strange. He might say something like, "I'm not sure about love. Maybe you ate a meal without realizing it." Laura, who was thinking about this suspiciously, also noticed that Martin didn't want to talk about himself or his past. Realizing how little she knew about him, Laura tried to find out more about him one day while Martin was at work. She went into his office even though she knew she wasn't supposed to and looked through his things. She found a hidden box on a shelf among them that had many pictures of Martin with a stunningly beautiful woman inside. There was writing on the back of the photos that said, "Martin and Diana forever," which made them look happy. Laura thought Diana might be an old girlfriend. And the fact that her husband had many pictures of another woman made her feel uneasy. In her search for more information about Martin's past, Laura tried to get into his locked laptop. She tried many codes, even her own name, but none of them worked. When she tried one last time and typed Diana, the screen unlocked, breaking her heart. Laura was already mad that her husband's password was another woman's name. But when she found out that her husband had bought women's items online, she was even more angry. These purchases included clothes, hair care items, and even tampons. Laura was angry when she saw Martin come home from work and told him she thought he was cheating on her and shopping for another woman. Martin was annoyed that Laura had come into his space. So he told her that the things he was buying were for his sister. But Laura, who was still mad, asked him why he needed to buy sanitary pads. Martin said that his sister lived in a small town with few good stores. So he shopped and had the groceries brought to her. Laura wouldn't give up and kept asking who Diana was. Martin finally admitted that Diana was his late wife, who had passed away in a terrible car accident 2 years before. He looked very upset as he did this. His voice was heavy with sadness as he talked about what happened. He made it clear that he was driving when a truck hit the back of their car, putting an end to Diana. Laura couldn't say anything as she thought about the shocking news. Laura quickly started to say sorry to her husband when she realized how stupid she had been. She was so embarrassed that she said she was truly sorry and promised never to hold suspicions or invade his privacy again. Martin told her that his quiet behavior was because he was still hurting from the passing of his wife. After embracing and kissing each other, the couple went to sleep, trying to get back to normal. But there was a persistent problem in the form of strange noises that Laura chose to ignore because she believed Martin's account. A few days later, Laura woke up to a sound that was very loud. She called out for Martin because she was scared. But he wasn't in their bed. She looked everywhere in the house, but nothing came up until she got to the kitchen. She was startled to find the closet door open. So she carefully walked up to it. When she opened the door, she was shocked when Martin walked in out of the blue. Laura was scared and confused. So she asked him why he was there and complained about the noise and not getting any answers to her calls. Martin, who didn't seem to care, said he hadn't heard anything, which made Laura think she might have dreamed the noise. He said that he went to the kitchen late at night because he was hungry. Even though she was upset, Laura decided to believe what he said and went back to bed with him. Even though she tried to calm down, she couldn't get rid of her unease and couldn't close her eyes in fear, since Martin had to go to work the next morning. Laura took the chance to look into it further. When she looked in the pantry, everything seemed fine. But when she looked more closely, she saw that someone had soiled the back wall behind the shelves with their hands. She was very upset. So she emptied the pantry and found a door key hidden among the food while Laura was pulling on the hidden door handle. She found a secret tunnel inside the pantry that led to a hidden hallway. As she slowly moved forward, the air filled with the smell of mold and feces. Laura walked down the hall until she reached a room with low lighting. The sad room had an old bed next to a dirty toilet. And there was rotting food all over the floor. She was shocked to find a woman lying asleep with her hands tied and terrible bruises all over her body. From the pictures, Laura knew she was Diana. Laura rushed to Diana's side out of panic. But the woman who was being held captive woke up and begged for help through tears. Diana told them that she was Cole's wife and had been stuck in this nightmare for months because he was crazy and jealous. Laura was shocked and tried to free Diana from her handcuffs, saying she couldn't believe the man she knew as Martin was really named Cole. Martin's words could be heard from upstairs as Laura tried to process the shocking news. She ran back to the kitchen in a panic and tried to close the pantry door in a quiet way. Martin had already found her, though. Laura tried to play down what she was doing by saying she was looking for food. Martin grabbed her wrist because he could tell she was scared because his face was now twisted in a scary way. He knew Laura knew his dark secret when he saw the groceries all over the place and the secret door only partly open. Martin knocked Laura out with a hard blow to the head that happened very quickly. He pulled her back into the secret room and planned to tie her up there. But Laura quickly fought back by hitting Martin's head against the wall while pretending to be asleep. Taking advantage of the chance, she got into a fight with him and eventually beat him. Laura knocked Martin out with a broken wine bottle she found on the floor. Martin was restrained on the floor, and Laura bound his hands and legs so he couldn't get away. She quickly freed Diana from her chains after finding a key to the handcuffs in his pocket. Then Laura helped Diana get to safety by putting her on the couch and giving her water to stop Martin from getting away. Laura blocked the pantry door with a broom and called the cops right away. Within minutes, police arrived in response to the urgent call and drove 5 cars up to the house. Cole was quick to be caught by the police officer, who then took Diana to the hospital for medical care. The next day, Laura learned that her acts had led to the arrest of a well-known psychopath. The cops had been looking for Cole for 2 years because they thought he put an end to his wife, who he had locked in that room for a long time. The police were glad that he couldn't do the same thing to Laura. Laura chose to leave the scary house and start over in a different city because the scary event had left her traumatized. Even though there were problems, she was able to finish college. Laura got a great job as a teacher after she graduated. Following this, she met the love of her life, got married, and soon after learned she was going to have a child. Laura finally had the family she had always wanted. Without trousers by her teacher, which was hard for a young child who had to sit in school for long hours. Kids in general like to move around, play, and jump. But kids with special needs love to do these things even more. For some kids, it's not only hard, but impossible to sit at their desk all the time. Sadly, this is what happened to the girl we're talking about today, a good person who went through a terrible experience. Raymond MCC and his wife Jennifer made up the Sir family. They had just moved from New Jersey to Florida. They were successful businesspeople who owned a beauty and wellness center in downtown Palm Beach that had just opened. The move wasn't just for a change of scenery. It was also to keep a close eye on the business. The MCC's only kid was Rebecca, their 6-year-old daughter. They had not been able to get pregnant again. At first, Rebecca seemed to be in great health. But when she was 3, she got a bad urinary infection that caused problems and a month-long stay in the intensive care unit, ICU, of a New Jersey hospital. Rebecca seemed fully healed when she was released. But medical tests showed that her bladder wasn't working right. Because of the serious infection, her bladder was too busy. So she had to go to the toilet several times a day. Even though it wasn't a major illness and didn't cause any other problems. It meant she had to make some changes to her daily routine. Rebecca's family learned from the family doctor that they could take medicine to help her get used to the new way her urine system works. It was made clear, though, that they couldn't completely get rid of the problem. Kids with this disease may have to go to the toilet up to 8 times more often than other kids and have trouble holding their urine. The doctor told the MCCs that Rebecca had to be able to use the toilet at all times to keep herself from getting hurt or having an accident. Jennifer MCC asked the doctor if there was anything they could do to ease Rebecca's problems and make her life easier because they were worried about her daughter's health. The doctor told them with regret that there was no other successful way to treat this new disorder. Some co-workers thought that people with this condition might feel better and have fewer cramps if they lived in a place with a stable climate. Since low temperatures and high humidity are known to make the condition worse, the family originally stayed in New Jersey to help Rebecca get used to her new life because they knew it would be hard. The MCCs didn't move to Florida until Rebecca turned 6 years old. Because the doctors told them to. This choice was made to improve Rebecca's health and help their business grow. Everyone was happy about the change of setting. But Rebecca loved the sea and being outside. Rebecca loved her new home in Florida. Even though it was hard at times. She was especially happy about the view of the ocean from her bedroom window. The MCC family quickly lost their original happiness about living in Palm Beach after a terrible event that made their 6-year-old daughter Rebecca go through one of the most embarrassing times of her life. On her 3rd day at a fancy nursery school in the city. It happened, the MCCs sent their daughter Rebecca to that school because they thought that the school's good image and reviews would help the teachers understand her health problems. Unfortunately, what they were hoping for did not happen. And Rebecca had to go through a terrible experience. After feeling pretty good for half a day of classes, Rebecca had to deal with something that was bound to happen in maths class. She felt a sharp pain under her belly with only 20 minutes left. At first, she thought she could hold it in. But after 5 minutes, the urge to pee became too strong to ignore. Rebecca raised her hand to ask if she could go to the toilet. But the teacher ignored her. Even though she knew the girl was in a lot of pain. At some point, Rebecca couldn't hold it in any longer and had to urinate on herself. Which stained her clothes. The kids in her class started laughing at her. Which made things even worse. And the teacher did nothing to stop them. The only adult there wasn't doing anything. So Rebecca felt hopeless and ran out of class to get to the school nurse's office. She wasn't wearing any extra clothes or being given any. And the school didn't even call her parents. The nurses told her they couldn't give her anything else and gave her some school trousers instead. Even though it was a bad scenario. Rebecca's school told her she would have to get by until she got home if she hadn't brought a change of clothes. It would have been easier, the nurses said. Making Rebecca feel even worse about herself. She had to wear the dirty t-shirt back to class and on the school bus ride home. But she wasn't given trousers to wear for those trips. Rebecca was embarrassed to walk around school in a dirty t-shirt and use trousers that didn't fit right. Her dad thought something was wrong when he saw his daughter get off the school bus crying and with her head down. He also saw a spot on her shirt. It made him very angry when he saw that Rebecca wasn't wearing trousers when he took off her clothes. Rebecca, who was upset, said she never wanted to go back to school again without waiting. Mr. MCC quickly and angrily went to the school to find out what was going on with his daughter when she got home. Coley, the head of the center, said that they thought Rebecca's shirt was long enough to get her on the school bus and send her home. Coley said it wasn't their job to give the child a change of clothes and that she should have brought her own. Raymond MCC wasn't happy with this answer. So he set out to show that the school had broken the rules and get justice for his daughter. It was in the school's guide policy that he found the mistake he was looking for. The guide said that sweaters, shorts, or skirts that were less than 4 inches above the knee were fine. Raymond checked the shirt his daughter was wearing and saw that it didn't follow the school's dress code because it was almost twice as short as what was allowed. He had to bring this violation to the school's attention and teach them a lesson for making his daughter feel so bad. Why can't my daughter's school send her home dressed in clothes that meet their standards? Even though this school has a great reputation. It's strange that you can't give kids clean, appropriate clothing when they need it. It's really embarrassing. Madam Director, I'm going to make sure everyone knows that your school is not worth the trouble. The next day, when Mr. Raymond found out that the school still wouldn't help or say sorry, he scolded the principal as someone who had gone to the school with her husband. Mrs. Msur was upset and told the school they should have called them to let them know what was going on. Our girl is very sick and needed to go to the toilet right away. And the school knew about it. But neither the school nor the teacher who was in charge at the time did the right thing. Jennifer Msur yelled at the principal. I am deeply disappointed. And we will not let this mistake go unpunished. She was talking about the couple's visit to the school and the threat of legal action. Belter Elementary School told local media that they had followed all the right steps and procedures for this kind of incident. They said they had invited the Msur family to talk about the internal investigation they were doing. But the family declined and turned down offers to settle out of court. A few weeks later, lawyers for MCC called the college to let them know that they were being sued and the matter was settled through an able agreement. Finally, the director of the center and the math teacher who wouldn't let the girl use the toilet were fired right away. Little Rebecca would never forget what happened or how it made her feel. But she knew that her parents fought for her and got justice for her. Her illness would make her life harder and bring new challenges. But she would always have her parents' love and support to help her get through them. That's all about the first story, and now let's watch another similar story. Camila, who was unconscious on her house floor, wanted to answer the cries outside. But it was very hard to breathe. And she couldn't speak. Before I go on, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel and pressed the bell to get all of my content. He crawled as hard as he could towards his door, using the last of his strength as he could feel his consciousness fading. At one point, he gave up. Feeling like he couldn't go on any longer, the scariest day of her life was just like any other day. Her mother had gone to work, leaving her alone in the small shack with only the radio and TV for company. They got bored after the morning children's shows were over. Because she had a limp, it was hard for her to go outside and play. So she liked staying inside. Even though there wasn't much to do. It was a lonely and difficult routine. With only the music on the radio and her constant hunger echoing through her world. One day, she was so hungry that she decided to steal a loaf of bread from a nearby store. The store owner saw her and, even though she felt bad, grabbed her thin arm and made her sit on the counter until her mother got there. He also took away her crutch to keep her from getting away when her mother, a young, thin woman, came in around 7 p.m. to find out about her daughter. She felt instantly better when she saw Camila standing at the counter. She ran over to give her a hug and asked why Camila was there and where her crutch was. Before Camila could answer, The store owner came in through the back door and told the worried mother about the attempted theft and the need to talk to her mother. You've been told before that if your daughter's responsibilities are too great, you should put her in a shelter. At least there, she'll get 3 meals a day and have someone to talk to. Stop trying to be a good mother when it's clear you're not. Sarah, the woman, didn't know what to say. She bowed her head and asked the man how much the package Camila had taken was. The man told her that wasn't the problem but sold the package. During the trip home, Camila kept asking her mother to forgive her. Sarah had become a mother at a young age. And Camila had a physical problem that made walking hard. Sarah had known what it was like to be poor and hungry. Her mother, who was tired from giving birth, put her in an orphanage, where she went through hard times, grew up with emotional problems, and was abused many times. This history made Sarah resent her mother. Sarah smiled at her daughter and told her not to do that, even if she was hungry. She also reminded her that she always brought food at night. Camila agreed with her mother, but she said she was afraid that one day she might not come back. Sarah reassured her, admitting that she was afraid too but trying to push those thoughts aside. The next morning, Sarah left Camila a couple of sandwiches and a note telling her not to eat all the bread and to save a piece soon. Camila found comfort in making up stories about people she saw based on their clothes and faces. Watching the different ways they walked became a fun game that took her mind off of how hungry she was. She did this every day for a few days until she met a man who caught her attention like never before. He was wearing a police uniform and walked in a funny way. Almost as if he were trying to walk in a fun way on purpose. Camila passed the time on the weekends when he wasn't around by drawing him. Sarah saw the drawings but didn't pay attention because she thought they were for a TV show. The next Monday, Camila was thrilled to see her superhero again on the street, looking like he was on his way to do important things. When she waved at him, he unexpectedly waved back. This made a big impression on Camila, who felt overwhelmed and decided to hide. This happened over and over again for a few days. Camila would wave at the officer from her window, get a wave back, and then disappear out of sight. The officer was interested in this interaction and couldn't help but wonder why a girl of about 8 or 9 years old spent her mornings at home instead of at school. He quickly found out that the girl, whose name was Camila, lived alone with her mother, having learned important details about Camila's situation. The police officer decided to introduce himself to the girl and make sure everything was in order in case she needed help. When Camila greeted him on his way to work, he surprised her by crossing the street towards her instead of going straight. The little girl ran to hide, but the officer didn't let that stop him. He knocked on the door, and a childish voice asked who it was. The police officer thought it was funny that the little girl was afraid of him, so he told her his name was Felipe and that she could trust him if she ever needed help. The girl hesitated, saying that her mother had told her not to open the door to strangers. The officer smiled and offered his name, Felipe, along with a card with his contact information, which he slid under the door. Later that afternoon, Camila told her mother about the encounter. Her mother was suspicious and thought it might have been a trick. She took Felipe's card and hid it in a kitchen drawer, telling Camila she should never call him. This made Camila sad because it made her question her belief that police officers were generally good and protective. Camila and her mother didn't know what to do the next morning, so they stayed inside and watched TV. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and they heard Felipe's kind voice outside, offering to leave Camila breakfast. They were surprised, but grateful, and Camila thanked him. She then reminded him of her mother's advice, which was to leave the food outside, and she would gladly accept it once he left. However, I wasn't expecting such a response. So she left the bag with the food on the floor in front of the door. You told your mum about me. Which is fine. Why do you think she doesn't want you to talk to me? The girl was nervous. But she needed friends to talk to. So he told her. I think it's because she's afraid you won't stop. Given how poor we are. Many people have told my mum that leaving me in a shelter would be best for me. I see. Would you like to visit a group home for kids? He asked. The girl quickly answered. No, of course not. I don't want to be away from my mum because I love her so much. Well. You'd get more food and make friends in an orphanage. He also said. Your mum could come over on the weekends. The girl thought for a moment and said. I'm not sure if she could. Also. Kids make fun of me because I walk with a stick. The food my mum brings is enough for me. All right. No one can make you leave your mum if you want to. I hope you enjoy the food. It's delicious, he told her. The agent thought about the girl's situation and the information he had gathered. She and her mother had a strong bond. Even though they lived in difficult conditions. He thought about what might have put her mother in such a bad situation and decided to find out more that afternoon by talking to neighbors, when Sarah got to her job as a caretaker. She recognized the woman from the pictures and went up to her as she was leaving for home. Hello. Good evening. Madam, she said. The police officer who had been talking to Camila said her name was Felipe. Sarah was shocked but calm. So she asked. Officer. Can you explain why an adult man would want to be friends with a girl? Camila doesn't go to school and spends her days at home without eating. So I worry about her safety. That's what I think is making me worry, Felipe said. Given the information I've gathered. Camila faces difficulties in walking. And a regular school isn't an option for her. The kids also tease her all the time. Maybe their living situations aren't the best. But she has me. Her mother. So that should be enough. Mrs. Sarah. I understand your love for your daughter. And I commend you for it. However. We're discussing a child who needs education and a healthy environment to develop. Which you are not providing, the officer said. That it's my pleasure to serve you. Mr. Officer. You don't have to say what you think about that. You'll have to deal with me if you want to file a complaint. Sarah replied. No. I'm not going to file a complaint. I just want you to think about getting help for Camila. If only so she can eat right, the cop said. You can't ask me for a favor. I'm sorry. Later. He might try to collect on it. And I won't let him trick me. Sarah said as she turned around and walked away. Felipe felt bad after the conversation because he realized that his efforts had made Camila's mother more defensive. That night. He decided to leave the situation alone because he knew that he couldn't force someone to accept help. Over the next few days. He only said hello to Camila on her way to work. Noticing that she had become less interested in him once a week. Felipe started to feel bad about what he had done. So he decided to leave Camila something to eat every morning. They agreed not to tell her mother. So Felipe could keep an eye on her without her knowing. One day. Camila called Felipe to say she wasn't feeling well. When he got to her house. He realized he forgot to ask her to open the door. And when he did. He was shocked by what he saw. Camila was unconscious on the floor with her crutch resting on one of the two chairs at the front door. Which served as both a dining room and a kitchen for the tiny, rundown house. It was a very moving scene. What struck Felipe the most was Camila's almost weightless body. Which looked like a wooden stick. Her arms and legs were so thin that she didn't look like the lively girl he knew. He carefully put her on the patrol car and left a note for her mother on the seat. At the hospital. Doctors told Felipe that it was a miracle the girl had arrived so quickly because she was severely malnourished. Felipe thanked the doctors and promised to let them know when he found Camila's mother. Around 7:30 p.m. Sarah came to the hospital in tears, looking for her daughter. When she saw Felipe, she accused him of taking her daughter out of the house. Felipe reassured her that he was not guilty. "Why did she not call my wife or me? I don't know. But she needed help," Felipe replied. He was worried about Camila's health and said that Sarah wasn't giving her the right care, even though she loved her daughter. When the doctors realized it was Camila's mother, they sat her down and told her how bad her daughter's condition was. They also told her that they were required by law to tell a social worker about the case so that the girl could get the help she needed. After talking to the social worker, who stressed how serious the situation was, Sarah had to accept that the best thing to do was to put Camila with a substitute family until she could get her life back on track and give her daughter a better life. It broke her heart, but she knew she had to do it if she wanted to stay out of trouble with the law. Sarah told Camila about the changes that would happen from that point on when she woke up. The girl was scared, but neither Felipe nor Camila's mother could stop what was going to happen. "I want to say something to you now. Camila said that I talked to the social worker. And when you get out of the hospital, you can come over to my house to hang out with my wife and our 2-year-old son. We've applied to become a foster home so that you can be close to your mother and won't have to stay in an orphanage," Felipe told Camila. A happy smile spread across her face, and Sarah let out a sigh of relief. As she left the room, she thanked Felipe. "Officer, why do you want to help us?" Sarah asked. Felipe said, "I know what it's like to be hungry and on the outside. When I was a kid, I lived on the streets and had trouble seeing. A family took me in and set up surgery to help me see again. I know how Camila feels. And I want to make her life better in many ways." Over time, Sarah was able to get a better job, buy a slightly bigger and cleaner house, and move in with Camila. Camila was inspired by Felipe and went on to become a police officer. Felipe always cared for her and treated her like his own daughter. This story shows how seemingly small actions, like returning a greeting, can save someone's life. It reminds us to think about the effects of our actions and share stories like this to inspire others.